in regards to that. First off, I'm sure you have come across the fact that many Muslim apologists kind of seem to appeal to you and quote you and try to kind of, I would say, use you in order to validate their Islamic beliefs. What do you think about that? How much do you think your findings and ideas are in alignment with the Islamic understandings of Jesus and Christianity?
And in the case of Muslim apologists, the idea is that the Quran doesn't have any of these problems, and therefore Islam is a superior religion. I'll tell you where I would agree. When it comes to the New Testament Gospels and the entire New Testament, we have many thousands of copies, and they do have lots and lots of differences among them. Hundreds of thousands of differences among our copies of the New. And the Quran's just not like that, obviously. I mean, the Quran has been faithfully copied for many, many centuries. So that part is absolutely right.
Could it be said that the earliest Christian accounts about Jesus, that the Gospels and the Epistles are very much accurate about Jesus? And
we know a good deal about what happens to stories in oral traditions, even in cultures that are not literary, even in oral cultures. Stories change, and a storyteller will change a story in order to make a point, or to in light of his audience, or for all sorts of reasons, and stories get made up. And so there are stories in the Gospels that are almost certainly made up.
When it comes to the Gospel, now the problem is not only that Islam doesn't accept the Gospels and the New Testament that we have. The idea is also not only that there was a book called the Gospel and that it was lost or corrupted, but also that basically the immediate followers of Jesus, that the early Christians were basically Muslims, meaning they didn't hold any of these heretical Christian ideas, and they were completely in alignment with the Islamic religion and the Islamic way of thinking, of simply regarding him as a prophet and worshipping Allah or God alone, and so on. What could you say about that?
So I would say that there are some elements of truth in that, historically. And some things I think I would consider to be problems. But on the basic level, the idea that the earliest followers of Jesus thought that he was a human, and that he worshipped only one God, and they also worshipped only one God, I would say that that's true.
What about the idea of the Son of God? Did they understand him to be the Son of God, not only in the sense of, a great guy, but also in a spiritual, religious way, the way Christians later understood him? Was that something that was there from the beginning?
I think it was there from the beginning, but they meant something different by it. In Jewish circles, Son of God is used in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible. Son of God is used for various beings. It can be used for angels, for example, but it can also be used for humans. The king of Israel was known as the Son of God, and the logic of it was that God has a kind of a representative on earth through whom he channels his will. And this person would be could be a human, but it was the one who was in a particularly close relationship with God, through whom God mediated his will. And so Jesus would have been seen as the Son of God in that sense. And he might have even talked about himself as the Son of God in that sense. Later, that came to mean that in some sense he himself was divine, that he was God. And that's the meaning that carried on later. But early on...
What about Paul, the authenticity of Paul's texts, some of which, as far as I understand it, precede the earliest gospel that we have? How authentic are the accounts of Paul?
So So the New Testament has 27 books altogether, and 13 of them claim to be written by Paul. So they're called the Pauline epistles. But of those 13, 6 of them are now doubted by scholars. Scholars think that 6 of them actually weren't written by Paul, but by people claiming to be Paul later. And I think that judgment is right.
It was your idea, we talked about this briefly before, but that the gospel in its original setting and according to the ideas of the earliest followers of Jesus would not be in alignment with the Islamic understanding of religion, right? I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, to some extent it is. I mean, they believe there's one God.
And were the Christians throughout the history of Christianity over the next 7 centuries especially vastly consistent with mainline Christian ideas such as that Jesus is somehow the Son of God, that he's somehow divine, and all these things? That this was a dominant, a vast idea among Christians, right?
So a lot of my books deal with this issue, and one of the things that I argue at length is that in the earliest centuries, in say the 2nd century, the 3rd century, so I'm talking like 100, 200 years after Jesus, there was a lot of diversity within early Christianity. There were various groups of people who claimed to be followers of Jesus that had different books from the ones that got into the New Testament. They claimed these books were written by apostles, and they supported views that there were lots of controversial views floating around.